Do y'all see this? Wait, do you see this? I'm wearing UCLA. That's UCLA. My sweatpants are also UCLA. This school took all my money. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, please subscribe down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want more videos like this, just let me know in the comments down below. So, the video that we're doing today is something that I get asked about all the time by parents, students, faculty, just everybody, and that's how I got into UCLA and a few other schools. I work as an academic mentor at my old high school, and so I get to work with students there about how to specifically apply and get into UCs. And I worked with this program when I was a student, and so now I'm like officially working for them. But I do get a lot of questions, and it's a lot of the same questions, so I thought I'd just make a video explaining everything. And I have all the notes on my phone right here, so if I'm checking my phone, that's why. So as I was compiling this list, I really realized how active I was in high school compared to now, and it made me exhausted. Like, genuinely looking at it made me exhausted. I don't know how high schoolers do it. You guys are just involved in so many things. I see that with my students now that I'm working with, and it's a lot. And in college, I can barely wake up to go to class. So I got into a few schools, and my school that I went to specifically had a lot of resources for students that you don't necessarily have at other schools. And so the way that our school system was set up primarily is we had regular classes and AP classes. There were no honors classes at our school for the most part after 9th grade, and so most students were kind of forced to take AP classes. And once you took one AP class, you were on the AP track, and they would just put you in more and more AP classes. And in order to be competitively eligible in my school, you did have to take a lot of AP classes, and they were mostly the only things offered. Given that context, I just want to have a full disclaimer that just because I did these things at my school and was involved in these activities and took these classes doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that, and I want to be really clear about this. The UC system, and a lot of schools in particular, will assess you in relation to your school. So depending on what resources your school has, that's what they're basing it on. So for example, my school I think offers 19 AP classes. I could be wrong, but they offer a lot. It's in the teens, and to be competitively eligible in my school, you would have to take a lot of AP classes. But let's say there's another school that only offers 5 AP classes, and you're taking 3 of them, that makes you a competitively eligible student. So it really is in the context of your school, and I don't want you guys to think, oh, I'm not taking this, she took that, now I'm not going to get into UCLA. Like, that's not how it works. They really do try to take into context your personal experiences, the experience of your school, and the resources that were given to you. So going off of that, a lot of colleges also have what is called holistic review. And so this means that you can't just have the grades, and you can't just be an athlete unless, you know, you're going for an athletic scholarship to a school. You have to be a well-rounded applicant, and that's what they're looking for. So not only are they looking for your GPA to be in good standing, they're looking to see if you have leadership skills on campus, if you're volunteering in your community, if you play sports possibly, if you started a club. All of these different things are things that they're looking for. It's stuff that they want to see out of their students, because they want to make sure that when they're bringing people into the school, that these students are going to then prosper at these schools, and they're going to do everything that they want to do at the school and make the campus better. And overall, as a graduate, they want you to succeed, because not only does that look good for the school, but it's good for you. So they really want to make sure that you're involved across the board, not just one thing. But to move on from that, that could mean that being a leader at your school can outweigh a low GPA score. So say, you know, UCLA is really competitive. A lot of students have high GPAs from high school, and say yours is just a little bit lower than what you see as the average on Google or whatever. If you're a strong leader on campus, if you were captain of your soccer team, if you started a club, if you did anything to show that you were a leader or that you were really involved on campus, and something that would make sense as to why your GPA was lower. Like if you're involved in a lot more things, it does make sense that your GPA would be a little bit lower because you're allocating your time to so many different things. So those can compensate for each other, and it goes the other way. So the less stuff that you're involved in, the higher your GPA would have to be. So that's something to keep in mind as you're deciding what to do in school and what you want to do in high school and how involved you want to be. That is kind of the way that they look at your application. Another thing that I wanted to say is you should really explain your circumstances in your personal statements, in your personal insight questions if you're applying to a UC. They have specific instances where you can talk about the things that have happened in your life that may impact your grades or may impact your ability to be involved. So say your family is struggling financially and all of these clubs have fees that you have to pay and you can't get them waived. That is definitely a hardship that you need to talk about in your application. It's something that is affecting what you can do as a student in your school. I want to emphasize this as much as possible. If you have any extenuating circumstances, if you were suffering from your mental health, if your parents had a divorce, if a family member died, if you were in foster care, these are all things that you want to explain on your application just so they can get a better understanding of your background and truly understand like why your grades are the way they are, why your activities are the way they are. So if you do have a lower GPA, and say you want to boost that GPA, you are already involved in other things on campus, but you just really want to make sure that you're going to stand out on your application, you can always take community college courses. That's what I did in high school. That's what both of my siblings did as well. Our parents made us enroll in community college classes early. It does offset those low scores, and you can take community college classes in anything and it will boost your GPA because those are more rigorous courses. So for example, if you're an artist, you can take an art class at a community college and that will boost your overall GPA. If you are just a real history nerd, math really isn't your subject, don't take math as your community college class because it is going to be harder. Go ahead and take that history class and it will show that you are invested in your education and really boost that GPA as they're looking at your application and seeing, oh yeah, they can handle these college courses already as a high school student. This is the same for dual enrollment. If dual enrollment is offered at your school, I highly recommend you take it because that just means you're taking whatever that high school class is, but now it counts as college credit. Now we are going to get into me. I know that was kind of a long intro, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys fully understood how the application process works, and that just because I do these things doesn't mean you need to do these things. I remember watching these videos. I know how stressful of a time this is, but every application is different, every student is different, every situation is different. The first thing I want to talk about is what schools did I get into. I didn't necessarily apply to that many safety schools. If you don't know what a safety school is essentially a school you know and are very confident that you would get into. A reach school is something that's going to be more rigorous, more difficult to get into. They probably have a lower acceptance rate, and these schools are just a lot more competitive, and those are ones that you are kind of iffy about whether or not you might get in. It's one of those real like nerve-wracking situations when you're waiting for the applications to come back. You're really just not sure if you're going to get in or not. So those would be your reach schools. I applied to half California schools because I am a California resident and that tuition is great. But I also applied to half out-of-state schools and they were all on the East Coast. So the schools I applied to in California were UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara, UC Berkeley, UCLA, and Stanford. And then outside of California, I applied to UPenn, Brown, Princeton, Yale, and Harvard. And so those are the schools that I applied to. The schools that I got into were Davis, Santa Barbara, Berkeley, UCLA, UPenn, and Brown. Let's get into like what I did to make sure that I was a well-rounded applicant for those schools. My GPA in high school was unweighted a 3.9 GPA. I was pretty much a straight A student. I only ever got 1B one semester. That killed me. My weighted GPA again was extremely high just because of the fact that I was taking so many AP classes, so I wouldn't necessarily compare this to other people just because my school is very different. Like we did not have those honors classes, so I was kind of forced to take AP. So my weighted GPA was a 4.8, and I know that it sounds extremely high, but given the context, I was essentially only taking AP classes my junior and senior year because that's just what was offered. I took one other class my junior year, and that was American Sign Language. And if they had it as anything else, and if American Sign Language qualified as an AP class, I probably would have had to take that as an AP too, because our school just wouldn't have offered it as a regular class. Now we're getting into my test scores. The first time I ever took the SAT, I took it without writing. I was just trying to figure out and gauge whether or not I was going to need to take an SAT prep course through this program that I was involved in. And so the first time I took it, I got a 1380. I didn't study, I didn't do anything, I just took the test. And then the second time I took it with writing, I got a 1450 on my SAT, and it went up a bunch. I paid more attention when I was taking the test, and I also had taken an SAT prep course that summer before I took the test, and it really taught me how to break down the questions, because the biggest trick with the SAT is it's really not testing how much you know, it's testing how well you know how to take the test. And as unfortunate as that is, that's just the way standardized testing works. I also took the ACT, and I took the ACT 2 times. The first time I took the ACT, I got a 30. The second time I got a 31. So my score didn't jump that much at all. It did go up, but I mean, that could have just been by chance. I will say though, if you are a student of color, the ACT historically tends to be the better test for students of color to take, just by the way that they ask their questions and the subjects that you're tested on. I don't necessarily know why this happens, but it is a trend that we do see. Into the AP classes that I took. Again, this is a very extensive list. First AP classes I ever took were sophomore year of high school, and I took AP Bio and AP World History. And then junior year I took Chemistry, Calculus AB, US History, AP Language, and Studio Art Part 1. And the reason I say Part 1 is because this class specifically was a 2-year class. So once you're enrolled in it your junior year, you also have to take it your senior year, just because it gives you more time to build your portfolio. During my senior year, I took AP Environmental Science, Stats, Literature, Gov, Macro Econ, and Studio Art Part 2. I also took community college classes, like I said earlier, while I was in high school, and the first class I actually took was in middle school. And the reason I took this class is because I was going to take American Sign Language during high school. It was a new class that was offered, and my dad just didn't believe that sign language was a real language or that it would count as a foreign language requirement, so he made me take Spanish. Freshman year, I think I just took one class, and that was sociology. And then my sophomore year, I took psychology and cultural anthropology. I also took pre-calc as a dual enrollment class that was offered my freshman year. So if you have that, I would recommend taking dual enrollment again. It's the same class, you just get credit for it at a community college. Between my junior and senior year, I was in a program at UCLA called the Vice Provost Initiative for Pre-College Scholars, abbreviated as VIPS. I did their program over the summer, and they had us take 2 community college classes. So I took a Fiat Lux in criminal justice, and then I also took a 4-unit class in the critical issues in education. So those are the 2 classes I took with that program. And then my senior year, I actually didn't have a first period, and instead of having first period for first semester, I actually took ethnic sociology instead. Again, wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that in the morning, because that meant I had to wake up at 7 a.m. to go to that class. Well, no, the class was at 7 a.m. So I had to wake up really early to go to that, and then it was just a really long day. Jumping into activities. In high school, my freshman year, I was the JV tennis captain, and then sophomore year, I joined varsity tennis. But after sophomore year, I actually switched into playing volleyball as my fall sport, because there was a coaching change. If you went to my high school, you know what happened, but I switched sports because of that. And so I played varsity volleyball and was varsity volleyball captain for 2 years, for junior and senior year. And then I also, all 4 years, I was playing varsity softball and was captain for 2 years. In terms of clubs, I was involved in NHS, which is National Honor Society, if you don't know, since I think we could start in 10th grade is when you were able to be active in National Honor Society because there is a GPA requirement for that club. I was also involved in Key Club, and I was on Key Club cabinet for 2 years as secretary my junior and senior year. I was also involved in the Black Student Union for all 4 years, and then my senior year I was on cabinet as well. And then I was involved in the Empowered Leaders Club, which is a club that is associated with the VIPS program that I mentioned earlier. And so I was on cabinet for that club for 2 years, my junior and senior year. The last thing I was involved in that was in school activities was the American Sign Language campaign. And essentially what happened was my school decided that they were going to shut down the American Sign Language program, and it affected a whole bunch of students who now had to take Spanish as the only foreign language that was offered at my school at the time. And it just screwed up a lot of people's foreign language requirements, and so we fought that decision and we actually got it overturned, so yay. So that was the last thing I was involved in as an activity in school, and it was probably the most major thing that I was involved in and the most time consuming outside of sports. The activities I was involved in out of school, these are going to vary per person. I did a lot of charity work as my outside of school activities, but again, that's different from person to person. I was involved in the Gamma Lambda Xeno sorority, and so what we did was we just did a lot of community service in the community. 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 Anyway, we just did a lot of community service in my area, and I ended up being president for the last year, and I think I was secretary before that. I'm not quite sure. But I did hold cabinet positions in that club for 2 years, junior and senior year. I was also involved in National Charity League, and National Charity League was a mother-daughter organization where essentially I was volunteering with my mom and other mother-daughter duos in the community, and with that we could volunteer with so many different philanthropies that we were partnered with. If you are in a program like this that's similar to National Charity League where you get to work with philanthropies, you can always separate that out in your application. If you worked with one philanthropy a lot more than maybe the other ones, you could put that in separately. I also worked with Special Olympics through, my mother's a physical therapist, and so she would take me a lot of the time to do Special Olympics, and since I'm an athlete, I just had this special connection with it, and I don't know, I kind of got hooked. But I volunteered with Special Olympics. And then since I knew American Sign Language, I saw that there was kind of a gap in the medical field while I was in high school, as I was talking to my teacher who was deaf, and how there's just a disconnect in that. And so I started teaching just a one-time course during, I think I did it maybe twice a year, so just 2 days out of the year, nothing extensive, but I did teach like very simple medical sign language to physical therapy students that were taking classes under my mom because she is a professor of physical therapy. I also worked at a muscular dystrophy camp for a summer, and then I also held an annual clothing drive, and so this was actually part of National Charity League, but I kind of over the years turned it into something different. So I turned what would be just a normal, like, let's take the clothes that we have in our house and donate them to the LA Mission, to collecting clothes from my school through Key Club and other organizations to then donate to the LA Mission. And so I started doing that every winter, starting I think sophomore year. And then lastly, sorry this is a lot, but the last thing I was in was I was a Tournament of Roses journalism intern. If you don't know what the Tournament of Roses is, it is the organization that puts on the Rose Parade, and I was an intern with one of my friends from high school. He actually goes to UCLA now, and we were just taking photographs and doing interviews, and it ended with one article, but it was just a really fun program because we got to be involved in all of the activities outside of the Rose Parade that are still associated with it. I know that I was involved in so many things. I was in just, I don't know, I did a lot. I had a lot of time on my hands, I guess. It's a lot, it's really overwhelming. I at times think maybe I used it as a distraction, but just because I did that, again, that does not mean that you need to do that. My brother had a lower GPA than I did. He was involved in a lot less activities. He did not hold cabinet positions in a majority of clubs, but there were certain things that he did that I didn't do, and vice versa, and we both ended up at UCLA. And he still got accepted into every single school that he applied to and went to UCLA and graduated from UCLA last year. So it really, really, really just depends on how you put your application together, how well you explain your circumstances that are leading to why you are in the position that you are. If I'm being completely honest, I was really lucky in the fact that I had the time to be able to do these things, and I was supported by my parents. Not everybody's situation is like that. I really, really want to emphasize the point that everybody's application is different. They understand your circumstances. They really are taking a holistic review approach, especially if you're applying to the UCs, because I know how the application works. Get involved in what you can get involved in. Take what you can take. Do not overwhelm yourself with so much that your grades start to falter, because that's really not what you want to happen. Do what you're passionate about. It makes it a lot easier to be involved in things if you are passionate about it. Do the activities that are going to make you happy, and if at your school they don't have something that you want to be involved in, create it. Create a club, create a space, because more than likely there's other people at the school that are feeling the same way. Go where you want to be. Don't go based on how other people see it or what you think you need to do in life. Research your schools, make sure they have your major. If you really want to be a business major, maybe don't come to UCLA because we only have biz econ. That's not the same thing. There's just so many things to keep in mind when you're looking for schools and when you're waiting in this process. I know how it feels. I'm not that far removed from it. It's really anxious, but you will go where you need to go and you will be where you're supposed to be. So that's just what I want to leave you with. Good luck to everybody who is going through this process. It's all gonna work out. It's all gonna be okay. That's the end of this video. Again, if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. Let me know in the comment section what else you want me to do, what other videos you would like to see, and yeah, that's it. So, bye!